Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, the co-host for this podcast, and we're back for another episode. And today we're going to talk about the Huskers finally moving on from Ed Foley, and we'll see about some new potential names for the special teams coach position, some more transfer portal movement. We've got two new players coming in, another couple of players coming out, so some more movement there. We'll talk about the offensive line and a huge win for Nebraska basketball on Saturday. So we will cover all that. Before we do, please make sure that you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. And Danny, how are you doing on this Monday morning?
I'm doing well. A lot of movement for Nebraska athletics, a lot of movement for my Patriots. So my fingers hurt from typing, but I'm doing well. And it seems like even in the off season, there really is no off season.
There really isn't an off season. It really does seem like that. So I guess we should start maybe with, I guess, the biggest headline from the weekend is the fact that Ed Foley was finally relieved of his special teams coach duties on Saturday. We kind of all saw the writing on the wall after the bowl game. But what are your thoughts about Ed Foley finally kind of being relieved of his duties as special teams coach after two kind of lackluster seasons?
People want to make, like comments about Ed Foley and he sucks and blah, blah, blah. And he seems like a really good guy, okay? And I'm not going to take that away from him. He seems like a good guy. He seems like a solid dude. And sometimes you just don't get it done on the field, whether it be coach or player. And, I don't wish him poorly. I wish him nothing but the best. Just didn't work out at Nebraska. I thought, Matt Rule tried to do right by his guy and keeping him for the, past couple seasons. And ultimately it didn't work out. And I know it's, hard to fire your friends. That was the downfall of Scott Frost. I mean, we saw it with the demotion of Marcus Satterfield, and he brought in Dana Holgerson. And now we're seeing Ed Foley, depart the program. So it's a tough decision to make, even if, the play on the field was poor in terms of special teams, but it was a necessary one. And, Matt Rule showed that he is not messing around with the coaching staff, despite, knowing some of his previous coaches. And I think that's a credit to him as well. So I wish Ed Foley nothing but the best, and hopefully he can find a role that suits him a little bit better, because he was a good recruiter. I mean, I remember when the staff first came in, he was recruiting all over Nebraska. And I remember we talked to Tristan Alvano, and he had, great things to say about Coach Foley. So I wish Coach Foley nothing but the best. And I'll be interested to see who Nebraska lands.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, Ed Foley was a great guy and a great kind of representative of this program, I think, on the recruiting trail and things like that. It just didn't, the results just weren't there. It's like we've talked about before. I mean, you get paid to do a job, and if you're not doing that job, or if that job's not, getting done successfully, then you're not going to have a job anymore. And that's just how it works in major college football. I mean, not that everything was his fault, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with you at your desk. You're the special teams coach. And so it had to happen. I think it was a good move. The one name that everybody's kind of throwing out, Steve Sipple and everybody else right now, is Mike Eckler. I'm currently the special teams coach at Tennessee. I've seen posts that, his contract is going to be expiring. I haven't checked that myself. So just, FYI on that. I don't know if that's true. But I mean, either way, he is from David City, Nebraska. He worked under Bo Pelini at Nebraska. So he's been the special teams coach at Nebraska before. He's, I think, the special teams coach and outside linebackers coach at Tennessee. So he's got, some multiple responsibilities there, but he's done a really good job and, has the connection to Nebraska. So it would take some money, but at this point, I mean, Matt Rule shouldn't be an issue for Matt Rule. He's got, definitely a lot of staff money, and if they have to spend whatever, $1 million or whatever to get this guy and to lock down the special teams, then I think that's what you got to do.
Bring back Bill Bush. No, but I think Eckler would be a solid hire. And I think he brought a lot of energy when he was on the coaching staff and in the previous years. So I wouldn't mind that at all. I'll be interested to see who they select. And, I think whoever it is going to have an interesting kind of situation to work with the emergence of John Hull and, of course, Tristan Alvano's injuries, how that kind of played out last season. So It's going to be interesting to see who it is and what he does to the special teams unit.
Another name I think that's worth mentioning, Mark Scott is his name. He's currently quality control special teams for Baylor, but he was the special teams coordinator under Dana Holgerson from 2020 to 2023, and has done a pretty good job. So that might be another name to keep in mind. It also could be somebody with no connection to Matt Rule or Dana Holgerson. We have no idea, but those are just a couple of names that have kind of been tossed out. So we'll see how that search kind of progresses. I would think it would happen, relatively quickly. I mean, obviously spring ball is not till March, so you have a little bit of time, but I would think within the next couple of weeks we would have, a special teams coach in place. And then beyond the coaching staff, there was a lot of things that happened this past weekend with roster movement. And one of the first, I should say, is Thomas Fidone has now left the program. We don't know for sure if it's for the NFL draft or the transfer portal at this point. I've heard, on the Michigan, I've heard that, potentially he could be connected to Michigan. People have thrown out Iowa, obviously, because he's from Iowa. But to me, I definitely think he could use another season of college football. So that'll be interesting to see. But what are your thoughts or reactions to Thomas Fidone leaving the program? Because it kind of seemed like he was going to come back. I mean, I thought after him playing in the bowl game, I thought, maybe he'd go to the NFL draft. But I did think there was a chance he would come back to Nebraska if he didn't go to the draft.
You know what? As much as this sucks to say, I'm kind of glad he's gone, because this isn't a personal thing, but you saw the injuries take effect on his play. He had trouble running. He had lost his speed. He wasn't the same player that was recruited out of high school. And he would have been a nice veteran body at tight end, but to me, I felt like the writing was on the wall during that Wisconsin week when Holgerson kind of called him out for maybe not practicing as hard as he should have. And to his credit, he bounced back and he contributed well in the offense from that point on. But I do think Nebraska has a solid but young tight end room. And I think that swings open the door for a guy like Carter Nelson to come in and make an impact right away. Not to mention, people mentioned Mac Markaway as well. He was hurt during summer camp or preseason camp last year, and now he should be back and fully healthy. So there's a lot of options at the tight end room now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they move Carter Nelson back to tight end. They haven't really said that they're going to, but hopefully they do. I mean, I think that would make sense. And then Heinrich Harburg obviously will have to, be one of those guys to step in and play a lot next year at tight end. So we'll see. I mean, if it's if they move Carter Nelson there, then yeah, I think it could still be a threat on offense. But outside of him, I don't know if there's anybody that's really too exciting in terms of like the passing game. But I think Harburg has a chance. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do if that's a position that they target. I feel like probably not. I feel like they'll probably just roll with what they got at tight end going into next season.
If they didn't have the depth that they do at wide receiver, I could see it, but I feel like they're just going to roll with what they have because in terms of pass catchers, just in general, they really don't need one at the tight end position. It would be nice to have one, and maybe Harburg will emerge or someone will emerge out of the room. But this is kind of made easier by the fact that they do have a ton of depth at the wide receiver spot.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I worry about with tight end is just, from a blocking perspective, they use those guys quite a bit. But, I think Heinrich could do fine in that regard. Carter Nelson, I think he still has some transition to make. And he did have hip surgery over the weekend, too, should be noted. But
he did.
Yeah,
yep.
I think he'll be a fine blocker. And I think more of a move inline tight end. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do once he gets healthy. And then, even more transfer portal commitments. I guess we should mention Gabe Ervin did commit to Kansas State. So, that's kind of, in some ways, now that Dante Dowdell is gone, there could be a spot for Gabe Ervin on this roster. So, I don't know. I kind of wish he was still on the team, to be honest with you.
I do too, but at the same time, there's been a spot for Gabe Ervin on this roster for the last 17 years, and, he just hasn't been healthy. I hate to be a jerk, but it seems like he just hasn't been able to put it all together. He did have a little bit of a red zone back role in 2022, I believe it was. But I mean, he just was never able to find his footing here, and he's had his opportunities. He's just never been able to stay healthy. I remember the season opener against Illinois in 2021. It looked like he was back to himself, and it looked like he would be counted on as the number one back, but he just could never stay healthy, and that was always the knock on him. So, I mean, do I wish he was here now for depth? Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like moving on from him isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world either.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they add another running back. We kind of been talking about that since Dowdell left, but they haven't been connected to any running backs. So we'll see. Lots of time still in the transfer portal, though, obviously. But one addition they did make starting on Saturday, Marcus Watson-Trent, somebody we talked about before, was the defensive player of the year in the Sun Belt Conference. 5'11", 220 pounds, has 27 career tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 6 forced fumbles. He had 4 forced fumbles in 2024, 6 career pass breakups. So, I mean, this is a guy that I think can play, all 3 downs, in terms of being able to cover a little bit in pass coverage. A really good tackler, 365 tackles. And I just think it solidifies that linebacking group even more. You need depth in the Big Ten to get through a season. And now I feel like you've got, Watson-Trent, you've got Dason McCullough, you've got Vincent Shavers, you've got McGahee, and then you got the 2 freshmen coming in that can have an impact as well. And I just feel like it allows Nebraska to be really versatile too with Dason McCullough. I mean, he could play some more edge. He could play, you know what I mean? He could play jack. So I just feel like this gives them 2 really good, solid inside kind of linebackers with Shavers and Watson-Trent, and then maybe Christian Jones in that mix. And then you've got three dudes who can kind of rush the passer in Dason McCullough, Dawson Merritt, and then also McGahee. So I like that you have 3 guys who can kind of play inside, 3 guys who can kind of rush the passer, and I feel like this linebacking core is definitely been upgraded from last season, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the I'm gonna say probably one of the best linebacking groups in the Big Ten. But you mentioned the versatility. Nebraska can mix and match with these names. They can have several combinations they can go to. And Watson-Trent actually had 11 tackles against Nebraska during the ill-fated Scott Frost game. I know we were watching that one together, but he's such a dynamic player. He's a proven player. He's a stud, and Nebraska clearly made it a point of emphasis to get veteran linebacker depth in the portal this offseason, and they filled that goal.
And then they clearly were, interested in adding players to the secondary too. We've seen them target a few, but they added Jameer Khan from Southern Illinois, another guy who played for Jamar Mosey at Lee Summit North in Missouri. 6 foot, 180 pounds, has 2 years of eligibility left, but had 59 tackles last season, which is quite a bit for a corner. 6 pass breakups. He's played on special teams. He played right away as a freshman. He's a guy that probably could play, multiple spots. I think he could probably play safety. But to me, I guess the way that I look at it, they've added Andrew Marshall. They've added Khan now. You've got Bly Hill in the cornerback room. You got Donovan Jones, Larry Sanders. I feel like, it's kind of setting up for Malcolm Hartzog to move like fully to safety. With Deshaun Singleton leaving and Isaac Gifford leaving, I feel like he could play, more of that free. Yeah, if you have him and Marcus Buford. yeah, Marcus Buford's another that they can they can play corner if they absolutely have to, but I think we've seen that Nebraska wants to shift away from that. So I mean, if you look at I think Marshall's going to start, I think, right, and then maybe Donovan Jones or one of these other guys, and then if you have Hartzog and Buford maybe as your 2 safeties, I think that's a pretty solid lineup right there.
And let me be clear. I don't hate Hartzog or Buford, as players. I don't think they're corners. So now you have that corner depth, and it gives Nebraska the flexibility to put Buford and Hartzog at positions they're more comfortable in. Because I thought Hartzog was actually a pretty decent coverage safety, and I thought that the ability to kind of not freelance at safety, but to have more freedom at the safety position to use that athleticism to make a play instead of just focusing on coverage for Hartzog was a lot better for him. And I think he'll be able to excel better in a safety role, and same thing with Buford.
And I think with Hartzog, what he does well, I mean, he's good at finding the football, and I think he's good at,
Mhm. Yep.
kind of following the football and reading the quarterback's eyes. Those are all things that you're able to do more as a safety. Like as a cornerback, you're playing your man, and sometimes you're having to turn and find the ball. It seems like he's just better when he can play safety and kind of follow the quarterback's eyes, make plays on the ball. So not that you never cover. I mean, you can cover tight ends, and your safeties are still going to be in coverage situations. And so, I mean, it's good to have guys who can cover, who can do that in a pinch, but I definitely
Sure.
think that would be a much better position for him to be in. And then, yeah, I expect Caleb Benning to be in the mix too. Ramir
Mhm.
Stewart, is another one. And I think we're really going to see the benefit of having, John Butler back there and an NFL caliber secondary coach. So I like both of those additions. Nebraska's now up to 14 in the transfer portal. How many more additions do you think they're going to make?
Mm. I'd say 3 or 4, maybe. I mean, because we do need offensive linemen, and I know we were joking off air about it, but we do need offensive linemen. Maybe another running back, and then they always like to take 2 players that they like to take for just pure talent. I've noticed that in the last couple classes, but uh, shout out to Matt Rule and actually, this is the point I wanted to get to that I just remembered. Matt Rule, at the beginning of his tenure, was focused on being a developmental coach. Get kids out of high school, learn to develop them, have them stay 4 years, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. You can't do that in college football anymore. Even just when Matt Rule was hired, the transfer portal has completely changed the trajectory of the development process for college football. And we've seen, much like Fred Hoiberg, who we'll get to in a second, Matt Rule adjust on the fly with the transfer portal. And I think this offseason, he's done a really good job because I know he loves to develop kids and I know he loves to, build programs. But the reality of it is the transfer portal is getting in the way of building a program and having a kid stay for 4 years. That's not the case anymore. I mean, we've seen it at Colorado. We saw it at Indiana last season. So shout out to Matt Rule for changing his philosophy for what was probably kind of difficult for him to do.
Yeah, definitely. You have to function in the transfer portal. And Nebraska's been very active in that. 14 additions so far. If you look at the roster limit, Husker Online put out, a scholarship chart, and there's still like 30 players over. So there's going to be, there's a lot of walk-on types, and that's
Yeah.
the thing is Nebraska is going to have, some of the most transfer portal departures because they have more walk-ons than most teams. So like,
Yeah.
it's not surprising when you see a graphic that shows Nebraska having the most because they have they kind of have more spots. They gave out more spots than other teams did generally. So a lot of those players are still going to have to move on. I'm not sure if they're going to announce it, but one important addition before we move on to our next topic, which we'll mention some offensive linemen, but Jalen Gramstad, according to Sean Callahan, will be back next season, 2025 for Nebraska football, and I think that's a important pickup. To have him serving as the backup quarterback for Dylan Raiola instead of TJ Lateef or one of these younger guys. And I think that also further cements the fact that, Heinrich Harburg does not need to play quarterback at all in practice. He can focus on tight end and help shore up that position. So I like the fact that Jalen Gramstead will be back for one more year.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Dylan Raiola, Marco Davila, TJ Lateef coming in. Then you have the veteran and Jalen Gramstead, kind of the veteran of the room. And I do like the fact that he's coming back 1 year because, like you said, this means that Harburg can now focus at the tight end position. They don't have to try out positions and then switch him back to quarterback. Like I remember they played him at wide receiver at the beginning of 2023. So he can now fully focus on the tight end position. They have a full quarterback room and they have a guy with experience who can help mentor and lead the younger guys.
All right, everybody. So now we'll get to the topic we're all wondering about, offensive line, which probably should have led off the show with that instead of 20 minutes in. But so my guy, Famili, whatever, Fayamo, however you say his name, from Washington State, he's committed to Wake Forest. So he was the number 2 offensive tackle on the board. Michigan and Nebraska were right there, and then his old position coach went to Wake Forest, and that's how they got him. Because I guarantee you that Nebraska had a bigger NIL offer on the table. Like, Michigan wasn't very confident. I think it's because of the money Nebraska was throwing around. So like they're trying to get these guys. It's just, Wake Forest had the relationship, so they were able to get him. But there's 2 other names that have emerged since then. Elijah Pritchett, who was the starting tackle for Alabama this season, started 12 games. One start at or he played, played in 12 games. He had a start at right tackle and a start at left tackle. He entered the portal, and according to Sean Callahan of Husker Online, that's a player that Nebraska is trying to throw their money at. So that would be one. A guy who's at least started some games. Then another one, Ohio State's George Fitzpatrick entered the transfer portal. 6'6" offensive tackle, played in games this year, played in the Rose Bowl. I don't know if he's still going to finish with the team over the next 2 games. It doesn't really say, but he is in the portal now. He was ranked 228th overall coming out of high school. A guy that pretty similar to Pritchett, has played some, hasn't played a lot. He played in all 12 games this year, but hasn't started any games, but does have a lot of experience. And it seems like those might be the next 2 options on the board. What do you think about, if Nebraska's able to add one of these dudes?
It's kind of crazy how the portal works, isn't it? 2 games away from a potential national championship and you're in the portal. But yeah, but I would be happy with either. I mean, you talk about experience, you talk about guys that have played in games. They're not project players. They're guys that can come in and play right away. Ohio State and Alabama, 2 premier programs, even after the departure of Nick Saban, or the retirement of Nick Saban, I should say. So I would be happy with either of them. And we'll have to see what happens, because we do need an offensive lineman. But it's not like, and I want to stress it's not like Nebraska is completely ignoring the position and is not trying. Offensive linemen are at a premium, period. So, I mean, they're going to have to battle and they're going to have to fight. And sometimes you lose guys because their position coach is at Wake Forest. I mean, like you reported a couple weeks ago, they had more money on the table for, what was it, Isaiah World, and he went to Oregon. So, I mean, they're trying. It's not like they're ignoring it. They're trying. And so, yeah, but I'd be happy with either of those guys. I mean, playoff pedigree, premier programs, they would immediately fill a need, and they would start day one. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, I mean, offensive linemen are, like finding, I don't know, a diamond, and it's going to be tough, but hopefully Nebraska can get something done.
Yeah, good offensive tackles. So it's like they're like gold in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to see this Pritchett dude who started like 2 games last year, and people are going to be on him like white on rice. So, I mean, and that's the thing, is it's not just Nebraska. Like, Michigan is after like the same offensive lineman, because they're doing the same thing. Like almost every team could use help on the offensive line somewhere. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So, Emmanuel Pregnon, or whatever his name was, Nebraska was interested in him last year from USC. He entered the transfer portal. He's more of a, I don't know if he's a guard tackle type, but some thought that he might go to the NFL draft. It was like an early round pick. So he would be a huge NIL, paycheck if they were able to land him. But they were interested in him last year. I think he was from like Rhode Island or whatever, but he was a big deal in the portal last year.
He was.
I think they may have even hosted him for a visit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but so maybe they get in the mix with him too. I think they need at least one. They need at least a tackle. I feel like they could figure it out at guard. And maybe they could do a tackle with like a Grant Bricks or somebody, but it'd be nice to get a veteran though. And they don't have a ton of experience. And God, I hope they don't have to like fall back on a Teddy Prochazka or Turner Corcoran there. That would be not a great situation.
But so you brought up a good point. They have options. They're just young and inexperienced, or you're gonna have to fall on Turner Corcoran or Teddy Prochazka again. So it's not like, from a numbers perspective, they don't need linemen because they have numbers. However, you need a veteran. You need a proven veteran. And so, if push comes to shove and they don't get one, we do have the numbers, and we do have the guys like a Grant Bricks, who I'm very excited to see play. I don't know if he's ready yet, but I am excited, and so getting a veteran is going to be important, but they do have numbers if need be. Hopefully it doesn't get to a emergency need be type of situation.
Yeah, but Grant Bricks, Preston Tamua, Gibson Pyle, Sam Sledge. I mean, they've got some guys coming up. But yeah, it'd be nice to get, just a good offensive tackle to replace, Ben Hart. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's also the spring window. There's a lot of time, and they're doing the best that they can. They're trying, like we said. So,
They're hard to get.
Yeah, they are hard to get, and they're still hosting that nose tackle. I think today that we talked about from shoot, I'm blanking on where he's from now.
Oh,
App State.
Appalachian State.
Yeah, App State. So hosting him today. So I mean, yeah, nose tackle, offensive line, maybe a running back. I mean, but I think they're kind of narrowing things down. But overall, I'm very impressed with the work they've done in the transfer portal. And last segment of the show, we'll wrap it up. Nebraska basketball on Saturday, huge win. Was it 66-58? I want to say was the score.
Yeah.
And just a tremendous defensive effort. They held UCLA to 0.88 points per possession. And this was just a really good UCLA team. The Bruins basically lead college basketball in forced turnovers per game, and Nebraska only had 13. They didn't foul very often. They had 16 fouls compared to 24 for UCLA. They won the offensive rebounding battle, and Juwan Gary was spectacular. And, man, if this guy is not on the All-Big Ten defensive team this year, like, he got screwed last year. I can't even say he'll get screwed this year because, like, that doesn't even justify it. Like, this dude is one of the best defensive players in the Big Ten, and I think he should be in the running for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, Gary was spectacular. Bryce Williams had another solid game. Andrew Morgan continues to play well. And this was encouraging on a night when the normally hot-handed Connor Esigian struggled a little bit. 21 minutes, 2 points, and he had a little bit of an off game, which happens, and his teammates were able to pick him up against a very good UCLA team. And I think there's some sort of aura or mystique around the Vault because Nebraska just can't seem to lose there. And it is a tough place to play. I think it's one of the best environments in the Big Ten. And Nebraska was able to get it done on Saturday. And when you look at quad one wins and the wins that they've had over the past, couple weeks, you have Oregon State, you have UCLA, you have two very good quality wins just in the past 2 weeks alone. And I believe that adds up to, just generally speaking, the season 4 quad one wins on the season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so they've got 2 now quad wins. So Creighton is a quad 1 and UCLA is a quad 1. Oregon State's close. They need Oregon State to be in the top 50 for that to be a quad 1 victory. And then there's one other one, Indiana. Indiana's close too. I think they need them. Well, I shouldn't say close because they beat them at home. So they would need them to be like in the top 25, but they've still beaten 4 teams in the top 75 right now in the NET rankings. So, and the thing about it is they've won, you look at those 4 games, 3 of them they won by double digits. And this one they won by 8 points. And like, I know that people don't think that matters, but when you're talking about the NET rankings, which the committee uses, it does matter. Like margin of victory matters. And when you're playing these other, like, group of 5 or these bye games or whatever, like the margin in those games matters too. So, and the Big 12 kind of taught everybody that over the past few years, like that's how they really cranked up their NET rankings, is just beating crap teams by a lot. But Nebraska, has done that, and they've beaten good teams by a lot too. So you have to feel really good about this team, and where they're right now, they're projected as a 10 seed in the ESPN bracketology. But that was updated. Actually, that was the 3rd. So we on the 5th. So that actually was before. That was before Nebraska even beat UCLA. They were up to a 10 seed. So once Joey Brackets updates this again, I would think Nebraska would have to be up to an 8 or a 9 seed, because beating UCLA the way they did, that was a really impressive win, I thought.
As of Sunday afternoon, they went from 43 to 34 in the NET rankings. Following the victory over UCLA, they're 8-0 in wins above bubble. They went from 39th to 33rd in the Ken Palm rankings. And aside from all the numbers, here's some just facts. They're 41-16 over the last 57 games. This includes wins over 15th ranked UCLA, 14th ranked Creighton, 6th ranked Wisconsin, top ranked Purdue, and 4 straight wins over Indiana. And at this time, I want to say it was 3 years ago or so, I was calling for Fred Hoiberg to be fired and this coaching staff to get an overhaul and get redone. And during that time period, Hoiberg has completely shifted how he does business here, both with his team and in the Big Ten. and it's paying dividends. 72% win percentage. And you look at some of those wins: UCLA, Creighton, Wisconsin, Purdue, 4 straight wins over Indiana. He's found a formula that's worked, and it's working and paying off in spades.
Yeah, and you look at one thing that's really interesting, if you look at the Ken Palm rankings, Nebraska's up to 33rd, which is pretty close to the NET rankings. But what's really impressive, if you look at their defensive rating, their adjusted defensive rating is 10th in all of college basketball, 10th. So if you're looking at pure metrics, and I think the Ken Palm is the best metric that's out there for college basketball. This is the 10th best defense in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And the only team who ranks better defensively in the Big Ten is the team we just beat, UCLA. That's the 4th best defense in the country, and we just beat those guys. So like right now, we're ranked ahead of Illinois, we're ranked ahead of Michigan State, we're ranked ahead of Michigan, just in terms of your defensive rating. And so that's something that I think is going to really help carry this team going forward. Offensively, they're ranked 75th. And I think that's going to improve. I think they'll continue to improve offensively as the season goes along. But when you can play defense this way, and you don't turn the ball over, and you don't foul, and you make free throws. I mean, Bryce Williams didn't have a spectacular game from the floor, but he was 11 of 11 from the free throw line. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like they're getting to the bucket and they're making them, and it's not like the way they beat UCLA. Like it wasn't fancy, it wasn't pretty. They got stops, they got rebounds, they took care of the ball, and they made their free throws. And you know what? Like that's a formula that can translate to every single conference game this year.
That's Big Ten basketball, baby. That's what it is. And you saw kind of at the end of the first half, Bryce Williams kind of figured out, hey, if I can just draw some contact here, get to the line, get my points, I'm going to do that. You saw the kind of the light bulb go off, and he did that, and it paid off. He didn't try to force anything. He just got to the line, took care of his business, and got some points. So, and that's a good UCLA team. I was very impressed with their defense as well. And I think that they gave the Huskers a good test, and the program was able to pass it. So there you go.
And UCLA was missing Eric Daly, one of their best players. So I mean, give them, say what you will about that. And it was kind of interesting to me that Mick Cronin kind of tried to downplay the vault. But what is that? 20 wins in a row now in the vault for Nebraska. I mean, I remember talking about
the vault.
I remember talking about how, what Fred Hoiberg and these guys needed to do was make this place like a hard place to win again. That was the first step to get Nebraska basketball back. And they've done that like beyond what I possibly could have imagined. So I think this is the best home court advantage in the Big Ten right now. Like, I'm not joking. I really believe that.
I remember having that conversation with you after that Purdue game in at the end of 2022, I think it was. And, they have, and we can't compete with anybody when we're at home. And I know we've had struggles on the road, but we were able to win a neutral site tournament this year. So maybe that bodes well for some of the road woes from last year. So we'll see. But whatever it is, Fred Hoiberg has it figured out. He's gone to the transfer portal. He's gotten impact players in multiple seasons now. So, I mean, if it isn't broken, don't fix it.
And then tomorrow night, Tuesday night, we've got a great matchup against Iowa, and of course, fans will love this on Peacock. So just get set for that. But I believe that's 7:00 Central Time tomorrow against Iowa. Let me double check that.
You're correct on that, yeah.
Okay. Sometimes I get my times mixed up because some places adjust for like your time, and so I'm looking at it and it's Mountain Time, and I'm trying to. Yeah. So that's how I screwed up the UCLA one, because I said that was at the wrong time, and it was because I was trying to adjust the time when really my phone was already telling me it was in Mountain Time, so I needed to adjust for Central Time. So sorry if I messed up anybody with the UCLA game, but
and I'm gonna have to figure out my Peacock login. So there you go.
Yeah, good old Peacock. I think they've got Michigan, UCLA there too. So I want to see Iowa's 10-4. Really a good offensive team, 23rd offensively, 126th on defense, which that's who Iowa is. They want to shoot a bunch of threes. And the one thing that you've got to do against Iowa is you have to play transition defense. And so that's going to be a big key for Nebraska tomorrow is, they give up a lot of threes, and Iowa wants to shoot a lot of threes. So, I mean, the 3-point defense was good on Saturday. And I think limiting the threes, especially in transition, because Iowa just wants to run and jack up threes really quickly. So finding your guy and being able to, get a hand up so that doesn't happen, going to be very critical tomorrow. And I think if they can win that transition battle on defense, I think they'll have a good shot of winning that game.
It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. And, there is no easy game in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is a heck of a basketball conference, so I'm excited to see what unfolds there. Nebraska's been tested a little bit this season, and so far, with the exception of Michigan State, they've passed the test. So Iowa will be another one, and I feel very confident in their chances just due to the fact that they play as a team. They have multiple players that can score on any given night, and they seem to be playing as a unit, and they seem to be playing together.
Man, Iowa Iowa makes 10.4 3-pointers per game. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They shoot.
Yeah, it is.
They shoot 27 per game, which isn't, there's teams that shoot more than that, but just the way they shoot the ball and the way they're always able to find shooters kind of amazes me. But like Peyton, they had Peyton Sandfort.
Guards that come to mind.
Yeah. But Peyton Sandfort, averages is one of their top guys, averages 2.4 3-pointers per game. And then you got his brother, Price Sandfort comes in and he can shoot threes. So it's like, it just, they have the McCaffreys, they got the Sandforts, they get these brothers that apparently, they have like, in Hoosiers, they show like the farm that's what these guys must do. And that's like, you have to have the driveway basketball hoop, I guess, to get recruited by Iowa, because they just get these incredible shooters. But we'll see how their shooters come up against our defense. I think I'd rather have a great defense than a great offense. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I think we can go toe to toe with anybody in the Big Ten. And again, I'll just stress that having so many key wins this early in the season is important, because I don't think it's going to be an easy Big Ten slate from here on out.
Nope, and like I said, I think they need to get to 11. So I mean, they're 2-1 right now. Just win nine of these next 17 games, and I think they will be comfortably in the NCAA tournament.
And I feel comfortable about their chances in the NCAA tournament, because I don't think, and I might be wrong on this, and I'll happily say I'm wrong, that we can get a worse matchup than we did against Texas A&M last year. I mean, that was a very, very, very bad matchup for us, and but we'll see. We just gotta win enough to kind of get out of that 8-9 seed range. But boy, that Texas A&M matchup was a doozy first game.
Yeah, that was a tough one for Nebraska, but I feel like, if they see a team like that this year, I feel like they'll be more equipped to handle that. I really like the defense, and Raleigh Wooster has been everything I thought he would be defensively, but like Bryce Williams too. I mean, I feel like he not only has he stepped up as a scorer this year, but as a defender, I feel like he's gotten so much better this year. And it gets overlooked because he's scoring almost 20 points a game, but like defensively, he's done a really good job. And so you had length and Morgan coming off the bench scoring. You've got, Braxton May, you got Berkey. Like, I feel like you've got a really solid roster, and Sam Hoiberg too, man. He was awesome on Saturday. I freaking love Sam Hoiberg, and it's just been so fun to watch that story develop. You're like, oh, this guy's just on the team because he's Fred's son, and that is not the case at all. He has definitely earned his place, like, well beyond this. And so it's just every time he comes in there, man, he makes big plays, whether it's a steal or he had a great pass for a couple 3-pointers. And like, it's an old basketball adage, like the better pass you get, the better shot you're going to get. And when Sam Hoiberg's out there, man, like dudes get great passes from him. So he just does so many little things for this team that you just can't even measure, really. He's just so valuable.
Yeah, he's not just a nepo baby. He's a dude that can play basketball, and he's kind of that lunch pail, nose in the dirt type of defender. And that says a lot about who he is and what he is as a player. He knows his role. He does it really, really well, and he's been an invaluable contribution, invaluable contributor to this team. So also shout out to Raleigh for, I believe, scoring over 1,000 points. He hit the 1,000 point mark on Saturday. So good for him.
Yeah, good for him, and good for this team. So they'll be back at it tomorrow. We'll be back for another episode of our podcast later this week. So if you haven't already, you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comments section. Thanks for joining us again. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.